This is the Stubbed Toe Show, where Americans come to speak their minds. I'm your host, Kyle, transmitting to you from somewhere under the big sky. For this inaugural episode on Veterans Day, 3 veterans are joining the show to talk about their service. My first guest, Clint, served in the United States Air Force in the 1960s. Clint, thank you for calling in and being a part of the show. What would you like to share with us about your time in the Air Force?
Well, I thought I'd phone in. This being Veterans Day week and share a few things, my experience from the service. I served in the Air Force 4 years. And, like any person of similar experience, first couple of years was, just had a lot of fun. And last couple of years got serious, of course, with the Vietnam War and everything. But I was thinking about a couple of the guys and thought I'd just call in and tell a story or two here. I had a friend from St. Simon's Island, Georgia, back in, this was in 63. I got stationed out in Kansas. There used to be an air base there at Salina, Schilling Air Force Base. And my friend from Georgia, anytime I've watched that show about Forrest Gump, he had the friend that was a shrimp boat, Bubba Gump, you remember. Anyway, this friend of mine, his dad ran a shrimp boat business down St. Simon's Island, and when he got out of the service, he went back to help his dad or possibly take that business over. I have often wished I'd have traveled down there and looked him up and seen how that was going, but like I say, it's been many years now. So, but anyway, the story I was thinking about on him, we were stationed out there at Schilling Air Force Base in Salina, and the 82nd Air Division was getting ready to come in, or I think it was 82nd, might have been 22nd. Anyway, there was going to be a changing of the guard, of course, there, and big inspection and everything. So our shop chief, the ceiling in our shop had not been painted. And, the old military thing, if it don't move, paint it. And anyway, the shop chief picked out another friend of mine. We were both from small towns here in southern Illinois. He picked us out to paint that ceiling. So for 2 days, we painted on that ceiling, and white paint. And having never been painted, it took 3 or 4 coats to get it right. Painted the ductwork and all the pipes and things that ran through there, but it looked good. And come day of the big inspection party coming in and everything, as we're standing at roll call that morning, I'm looking over the shop chief's head toward the front double doors that came into the shop. And above the door frame were these little footprints that you can make with the butt of your hand and then using your fingers for toes. And the footprints went up above the door to the ceiling, then across the ceiling. And this old tech sergeant, he was, "What are you staring at, Willis?" I said, "Look up there at the paint job on the ceiling there, Sarge." And he turned around and looked, and I thought he was going to die of a heart attack right there. He just knew the general was going to come in and see these footprints on there. But as it usually goes, a lot of worry about somebody coming in to inspect and then they don't show up. Oh, yeah. But anyway, I always thought of that as kind of a funny experience. The next one I was going to tell about, we was overseas during the Vietnam War there. We went early in 65. They closed that base in Kansas, and some of us got sent to the Vietnam thing. Anyway, we took the tankers to Okinawa and the 52s to Guam. And we were in Okinawa one day, and there's just 2 of us. We had a Quonset hut there, and we shared half of it with the A&E Armament and Electronics Shop, and we were in the instrument shop on the right hand side of the Quonset hut. Anyway, I was in the back of the instrument shop portion, setting up a altimeter or some instrument I was working on. At any rate, the other guy that was in the shop was sitting at the desk at the front of the shop reading the newspaper, had his feet propped up on that little slide out on the desk. And General Sack, I think it was General Powers, I think he was commanding Sack at that time. Anyway, he came in. It may have been General Ryan, but whichever general it was, he stepped in the shop there, and the guy with the newspaper pulled his paper down and looked up over it and seen it was a general. And instead of calling, shop 10 up, he said, "Save yourself, it's a general." And he ran out. He ran past the general and he stepped on his shoe as he went around him and out. And the general was just standing there kind of dumbfounded, and he said, "What was that?" And I told him who it was. And later, when he got back to the station and wrote his report about our new unit there, he had that story in there about that. Oh yeah, and you served yourself, so there's just a million things you can think of like that. A lot of good times. You don't think about so much the rougher times, but I did think about one. It was probably the one thing that I did that I always felt was worthwhile, but I rode as a maintenance guy on the first arc light mission against Vietnam. It was June 18th, 1965. And we left out of Okinawa on the tankers, and the bombers, of course, had came out of Guam. And we hit the rendezvous point down just off the coast of Vietnam there at 2:30 that morning, I think was the time, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, it was dark. And just as we got to the rendezvous point and we're looking to make our hookup, the sky lit up. And all of a sudden, I can feel that plane straining to the left, banking hard and getting out of the area there. And, you knew you was heading for Clark in the Philippines. Anyway, as we're going across the South China Sea there, we hit a point where the pilot broke radio silence, and he thought two of our bombers had been hit by a SAM missile. And, surface-to-air missile Russian job. And they don't have to hit a plane. They go off on proximity to metal, and that way they can damage more than one plane. But anyway, we get into the Philippines and began recovering the aircraft. And I was putting an EPR transducer on number 2 engine on one and just finishing up when he was a major at the time, later Colonel Dobbs, Major Dobbs. He came by and asked me if I was about to finish. I said, "Yes, sir. I'll be down here and just safety wire and the electrical connector." And he said, "Did you hear what happened to us this morning?" I said, "Yeah, I heard a SAM missile hit a couple of bombers." "No," he said, "that was what we thought early." But it turned out that one of the bombers was making a 360-degree turn. And when he came back into formation, the following plane in formation behind him, the right wing cut off the tail of the first bomber there. So we lost 2 bombers. And eventually then we went on back in and made our hit. Early in Vietnam like that, the Marines had landed in March of 65, and we'd got there in May of 65. And each unit, as they came in, tried to establish themselves as a major force, in the war effort that way.
Yeah.
And so that was a major piece for. Eventually, the arc light missions continued all the way until the Christmas missions of '73, when they finally went in and hit Hanoi and Haiphong, and the Vietnamese surrendered then. But
Did they
that
recover
was,
any of the crew?
yeah, I think we got 4 people recovered. I'd have to, read on that at some point to see what we did recover. But it seemed to me like we recovered 4 guys that had got into life rafts, and survived there. And I don't know how many men we had on each of the 52s that morning. Um, at least 4. You always had a pilot, aircraft commander, and co-pilot, navigator, and an emergency war officer. And most of those early 52s had tail gunners yet.
Yeah.
So we had at least 5, and there may have been maintenance. Well, it wouldn't have been maintenance guys with all on the tankers, but may have been other officers, being as it was going to be a big mission for the Strategic Air Command of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, getting in and establishing ourselves. But like you, I served. Well, you served even longer than I did, I think, but I served 4 years and had enough and came home to get a job and get started, with the rest of your life that way.
Yeah.
Like most veterans. But it is a special day for all of us. I know every veteran will sit around and have recollections of, like I say, funny things, serious things. 4 years is quite a lengthy time,
It's a long time when you're young.
Yeah, it is. That's right.
I almost did 5. I just had to go a little past 4, so not that much longer than you.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't go near into as dangerous situation as that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it it takes everything that everybody does to keep America the proud and safe nation that we are. I hope it stays this way for a long time. We've certainly seen that we're a blessed nation this way.
Yes, sir. And you keep in touch with a lot of veterans you served with, or just the area you live around?
No, I did. I do have one. Yes, good friend lives up in Springfield here, and we served in technical school and then out in Kansas together. Always been good friends, and I keep in touch with him. But the others, I imagine, are mostly deceased by now. I know the one good friend that I was telling about that yelled "Save yourself!" It's a general. He passed away about 2 years ago, and I wonder about the guy at St. Simon's Island. I need to make a trip down there within the next year or so and see if he's there, still running his shrimp business. But I had a guy up in Massachusetts, and I was up in Boston one time and went and visited him. But he was a second term uh, guy during Vietnam, and I'm satisfied he was, he was at least 5 or 6 years older than me, and so I'd put him mid-80s by this point in time.
Yeah.
But I haven't corresponded with him in years now. So used to send Christmas cards, to 3 or 4 guys, but anymore they're just kind of locked in your memory that way. Good times, good friends.
Yeah, I'll ask you another question if you don't mind, because that's a kind of interesting era you had your enlistment in. So your career field, I guess, I don't know what that would be the equivalent today. Avionics, was it that thing?
Avionics. Yeah, it's called avionics today. Uh-huh.
So with that, I know the draft happened before the Vietnam War too. Not everybody thinks about that, but were you drafted or did you volunteer on it?
I volunteered, and whenever I first got out to Kansas, we had the B-47s. In the bombers in the Air Force, 47 means that was the first year that one rolled off the assembly line, 1947. The 52, which it's still flying today, uh, it rolled off. The first one came off in 1952. So, but we had the B-47s and the KC-97s. And then just before the base closed in late 64, we had gotten rid of the B-47s and the KC-97s and had received KC-135s, which they're still in use today.
Yep.
And we had the A models back then. And eventually, like I say, as we went to the South Pacific there, Okinawa, and then on down south to various forward operating stations, the tanker task force, the Young Tigers, we were all was the nickname, I guess, of the outfit there. It was the 42 52nd Strategic Wing, and just reported directly to Offutt that way, Offutt being SAC headquarters. But it was a high pride outfit, esprit de corps type thing for the Air Force. It was a proud you served type organization to be part of.
Oh yeah, I imagine so. I went to there's the Strategic Air Command Museum in near Omaha. I don't know if it's in the city proper or not, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. It had one thing kind of stuck to me the most. They had a display on everyone who died, not attributed to combat, just in the entire Cold War. They had a huge memorial for it, and people don't think about that either. There's training missions, just maintenance guys, accidents like that.
Oh yeah, there's I used to have a friend after I got out. I worked in a plant, and a friend would, anytime there was an incident, the friend would say it's not a chocolate factory. Well, that's right, definitely the military. You're going to have some exposure to. You've got everything you've got out here, and plus you're working around jet engines and reciprocal engines on those old KC-97s and things. I can remember someone in Kansas being hit with a prop strike, and I remember at least two overseas there that got was running ground cord, got sucked up against the front of the engine, and they spread eagled across the front of the engine and caused the engine to stall, and it belched them both back out on the tarmac that way. Both of those guys got a trip home because of the nerve damage that way. But yeah, it's and you just like I say, you have a lot of fun, and a lot of memories, a lot of serious things go on, and for a 4-year career, you pack a lot of events like that in there.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you up all night, but last question I had, I was kind of curious about. So, because the era you were in and your career field, when you guys got sent over for the Vietnam War, did you have any idea what was going on over in Vietnam yet, or was there much news?
Just barely. I'll tell you, it was starting to make newspapers here. Maybe late 64. In our barracks there in Kansas, we'd got a E4 in, a highly decorated E4. He'd been over there with the Air Commandos out of Florida, and they had spent a year canoeing the rivers and things and mapping Vietnam. So he'd been over there in 63 and 64. And so, you'd hear him tell a thing or two that way. And then you'd see it in the newspaper just once in a while. And then when they closed Schilling Air Force Base. If you would volunteer to be sent to Walker Air Force Base down at Roswell, New Mexico, it was a guaranteed thing. And a friend of mine from here, I said I've got here in the States that I do correspond with. He volunteered for that and was sent there very quickly. Well, I wound up staying at Schilling until March of '65. And the rumor was it's going to discharge all of us that was left. I think there was maybe 35 or 40 of us left, 36, I think. And so I was kind of looking forward to getting discharged, coming back home. And I went out to the center there to check the bulletin board. You had to do that each day to see if your name came in with orders. And sure enough, there's my name up there with Westpac. And there was a guy standing beside him, and I said, Westpac, where's that at? Westover, Massachusetts. Gee, well, I'd been better off to went to New Mexico. anyway, as I turned to leave, there was a real nice senior master sergeant, had been our branch chief, the accessories branch in the field maintenance squadron. Things like wheel and tar, and heating and air, electrician, instruments, autopilot. All of us were in that accessories branch there. Anyway, he was the branch chief. Real nice man. His name was Whitmore. Anyway, as I turned, he's standing right behind me, and I'm looking at him face to face, you know. He said, well, you got the best orders in the outfit, son. And I said, Westover? No, he said, that's not Westover. It's Westpac, Western Pacific. You've heard of Vietnam, haven't you? Boy, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Gee, Sarge. No, surely I don't. That's not what that is. Yeah. He said, hey, you'll enjoy it. And he said, well, you joined the service to get in the war, didn't you? No. Really, Sarge, I joined to learn a trade and be able to go home and make a living for my family that way. Well, he said, believe me, you're going to enjoy it. And there are many things about a war that are enjoyable, especially from an Air Force nature. You know, I know most of the branches think we eat steak and baked potatoes all the time, but when you're out on the, yeah, oh yeah, I heard a guy telling a story the other day about he was stationed in Korea and he went over to the Air Force side of the base there, and he said they actually had curtains on their windows and carpet on their floors. I said, well, yeah, I didn't say anything, but you know, that's what everybody thinks. We actually at the forward operating stations, we got one box of sea rations a day, and you know, you didn't have electricity, you didn't have running water, you didn't have any of those.
How old were the sea rations?
The newest ones I opened, and I've probably told this many times, but I think the newest box I opened were 1939, and the as soon as that truck would or the plane would land and drop off sea rations for us, somebody on the crew would say, "Yep, they're cleaning out the bomb shelters in Los Angeles and New York City. They're sending us this old stock, and they're restocking those with new sea rations." You know, just kind of somebody's always around for a morale buster, you know, and yeah, there was always one of the guys would pick up on that. I don't know, there was usually 6 or 8 man crews like that out at these forward operating places, and that did give you a feeling of, you know, you was in the war that way. Yeah, they were good times, and yet they were hard times. I mean, you know, you put in a lot of long days. Uh, we typically over there, the best you worked was 12 hours on and 12 hours off, 7 days a week. when somebody in charge thought you'd had enough, they'd give you a day off or something. But you may work several weeks without a day off, and then but before I came home, that had eased. They were getting enough people over there that it had eased up some. We still worked those hours, 12 at night or 6 at night to 6 in the morning, 7 at night to 7 in the morning, and then at the forward operating stations, you work 24 hours on, 24 off. So you put in a lot of hard time that way, but it was enjoyable. And like I say, your team that you're on, you really develop a lot of friendship that way.
Yeah,
Did a lot of
that's
had
what I
a lot
remember
of good.
most.
Yep, right. That's the main thing. Kind of like being in a barracks. You develop good friendships there, hanging around in the day room, shooting some pool or something.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you taking the chance to jump on this show. I know it's new, and thank you for the stories.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I hope all the veterans out there are able to feel pride for their service.
I hope so too.
It's
Happy Veterans Day to you, and thanks for your service.
Well, thank you. I'll talk to you another time. You take care.
I hope so. You do the same.
Okay, bye.
Joining me live in the studio, we have Buck, a United States Army veteran. Buck, what would you like to say about your time in the Army?
I was in the Army from 1990 to 1993, stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, Charlie Company 124 Signal Battalion, 4th ID. And just a little story for you about my trip to NTC, National Training Center in Barstow, California. So, a little backstory. I was in Charlie Company. We ran MSE equipment, which is basically AT&T for the Army, secure communications, mobile, satellite, and hardwire. I was a switch operator, had to set up and maintain the switch for basically division-sized communications. At the time I was in Charlie Company, as I said, I got propositioned by one of my NCOs to go to Alpha Company to deploy with them to NTC for a month, and had nothing better to do at the time, I guess, so I thought the desert sounded fun for a month. So,
what was the NTC?
NTCs are basically a big training box in the desert in Barstow, California.
Okay.
Massive amount of land. They use it for bombing runs and war fighting kind of stuff. It's been there a long, long time in the middle of nowhere.
Gotcha.
So the company that was going was Alpha Company. They were slightly different than my unit. We ran what was called a LAN, which was basically 512 hardline wired communication options, is where they ran a node center, which was more of a connection switch. Usually in a comm unit, MSE, that at that time frame, they would have one LAN and 4 node centers. So these guys were a similar switch, but different than mine. But they decided that I guess I was the most skilled at what we were doing back then. It was brand new, so a lot of even the NCOs didn't know how to operate the equipment. And I was pretty new out of school. I was probably an E2, and was probably the best they had to throw at the problem. So they decided to send me, and we got on a I think it was a C-17 or a 141. I can't remember which one, but we flew over to Barstow and got to work. And we hit the ground, and they took us to a site that was in a canyon at the very far edge of the play box. So it was all the way out on the edge, and it was actually a pretty good site because all of our equipment set down inside this canyon, and the only thing you could see was the antennas sticking over the top. Of course, being an E2 and not from that company, I didn't know anybody, and got detailed immediately to go out and dig foxholes. So my first 3 or 4 days at NTC were spent digging in the dirt. At least it wasn't too tough of dirt. So we were setting up a M60 position up on the edge of the canyon, and I had just about gotten that foxhole dug. And like I said, it was probably 3 or 4 days into the exercise, and I knew they were having problems with the communications equipment because everybody was uptight, and I just was digging my hole, staying out of the way. So I decided to come back in and get some water and take a break from digging this hole. And as I came through the camouflage net, I ran right into the colonel, and he looked at me and said, what's going on with the switch? And I said, I have no idea. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I've been digging foxholes for 3 days. And he said, what? And he walked inside the tent and basically grabbed the E6 by the scruff of the neck and threw him out of the switch and threw me in there. And so I spent probably a day and a half untying computer knots and got us back up and running. And I guess that made them really happy, because a lot of pressure was on the division why they couldn't communicate. So that was a little personal victory, but just to set you up with what we were doing and where we were at. So month in the desert, probably a week or two went by, and I was out of the limelight now and back on guard duty, so just pulling guard and KP and whatever else we had to do. One night I got guard duty overnight out in this foxhole that I dug, and the tent we were staying in was just a GP medium, so fairly close quarters, and we had a E5. I don't even know the guy's name, but he was kind of Looney Tunes, and he would wear his wife's underwear on his head every night when he went to bed, and he'd wake up every morning screaming something like "Good morning Vietnam" or some crazy thing every stinking morning. And he was on duty down at the switch, which was basically our headquarters when we were in the field. The switch was the focal point, and I of course was up on guard duty with the one set of NVGs and an M60 and my M16 up in this foxhole. So I'm sitting up there about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I think I hear a radio crack. And back then we had, the squelch on the radios would break and stuff when you played with them, especially the non-secure comm type, And I was like, I just swear I keep hearing this pop, So I called back down to the switch and I said, hey, I think I'm hearing a radio. I think I hear comms out here. And when you're playing in the box, there's always an OP4. So you're always on guard and you're always worried about them attacking, right?
Yeah.
So the OP4 hadn't attacked us at all. I don't even think they knew we were there. There wasn't anybody around. We didn't see another single soul the whole time we were there. And I just couldn't get over this. I'm like, there's a radio out here somewhere. And so I called down and I told him, hey, I think I hear a radio. And he said, well, go check it out. And I said, okay. I'm the only guy in the foxhole, probably the only guy on guard. So I crawl over a couple of ridges and low crawl over the top of this hill. I look down into this little canyon. I don't know, maybe 150 yards from us kind of thing, somewhere around there. And I see, I think it was 3 or 4 Humvees and probably 8 guys down there around a tiny little campfire. And I'm thinking, wow, you got a campfire going? This is weird. And so I'm thinking this, could be the OP4. I don't know who this is, So I low crawl all the way back over this ridge and back down the canyon and up the other side and get on the radio again. I call down and I said, told him what I found, and I said, what do you want me to do? And he's like, well, go do it again and challenge them. Give them the challenge of password. And if they don't know the password, I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, light them up. I said, okay. So I crawled back through the canyon, back up on top of the hill, low crawled down the side because it was quite a ways away. So I didn't want to challenge these guys, not have them hear me and, give away my position too much. I wanted to keep it high enough that I had position on them, but still have them be able to hear what I'm saying. So did the best I could, thought I was an appropriate distance away, and I hollered out the challenge and dead silence. Hollered out the challenge again. Dead silence. So I drugged the 60 with me at that point. I just laid into them with the Mulzer equipment and the blanks. So they just stood there the whole time looking at me. So I didn't know what to do, to go down and talk to them or, so I crawled.
Hey, you all are supposed to be dead now.
You're dead. So I crawled back up the hill, got back on the radio and said, I lit them up just like you said. And they just stood there and looked at me. And turns out the following day, they were the adjudicators for the field exercise out there camping. And I guess didn't know we were there or thought they were far enough away or something, but I shot the judges. So that's my story. That happened back in '92.
That's the fog of war. That's pretty funny. Yeah, it's an interesting time you were in. Why'd you join?
My entire family, I think just about, maybe not consecutively on a father's side or a mother's side, but every generation has been in the military since Civil War. So very military-backed family. I chose the Army because they gave me more college money for a year less in service, and thought, grew up an Air Force brat, so I knew what I was getting into with the services, and thought I could sleep on the ground for 3 years rather than in a cot for 4. So
yeah. Now, when was it? Desert Storm kicked off, what, early 91?
It was in the basically the same time I was in. They kicked off. Desert Shield started like right as I was getting in. I'd already signed up, delayed enlistment kind of thing back in high school. And Desert Shield started just about the time I went to basic. In fact, they pulled us one day out of basic and lined us up in front of buses that never showed up, saying we were 3-week basic trainees, you're headed to war, just messing with us. And there was kids out there crying and got to call my mom, But buses never showed up and we never deployed. So
yeah, no, interesting time. And then, gosh, when did they really start drawing down? Was that already started before you got in, or?
No, there was a drawdown after Desert Shield a little bit, and people started having problems getting promoted about that time, but it was about the end of my time. Yeah.
You didn't have any thoughts of staying in then?
No, I always knew I was going to get my college money and get out and go to school and try and do something productive. If I'd have been a lifer, I'd have probably joined the Air Force like my dad or something, but the Army was a lot of fun while I was there. I enjoyed it, but again, I don't know. It was never my intent to make a career out of the Army. So,
well, thanks for your service. Happy Veterans Day. You got any good plans? Just another day being retired.
Just calling my veteran buddies.
Oh, I'll ask you about that. How many? You still keep in contact with a bunch of them?
Yeah, I actually just got back from a trip to Texas, visiting a girl that was in our unit. I was friends with my wife and I. And my wife was active as well, so we visited her, and then on probably our 20 years of that time frame, we met her and about 5 other people from the unit in Colorado Springs. Went back and just reminisced about old times and stuff, and so we do still keep in contact even from back then.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the Stubbed Toe Show. And thanks for coming in live from the studio. That was Buck. Thank you. My next guest is Brian. I had the privilege of serving with him in the Air Force. Our career paths were a little bit different, but we met together at some point. Brian, how you been, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on here. It's good to catch up.
Oh, likewise. We're doing a little of that before I started recording here. So, what are your some things you want to share about your little journey in the Air Force?
Well, I'll start off and say I don't regret it at all. We kind of were shooting the crap, so to speak, and that was one of the things we had brought up. And looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have done anything different, to be honest. More so life choices than career choices at the time. But I think gosh, the best time I had while in, I only did a 4-year enlistment. Um, as you know, I went in through a special program instead of a regular job that most people would get after they take their ASVAB and go off to mechanic school or cook school or police school or whatever. And then you and I ended up in the same career field and crossed paths.
Yeah.
But man, the first year and a half in, I got to go all over the U.S. That was fun, traveling everywhere, different training schools, and I was never in one place for more than 3 to 6 months at a time. So my first year and a half, I went to probably 5 different bases, and a mix of um, one of those was Fort Benning, Georgia, for a school there.
Yeah, is
And
it jump school or something?
yeah, that was airborne school, and that was it was neat seeing the other branches and how they operate, and it's a whole different environment. You know, that I look at the uniforms and I say they're the same, the flag's the same, and in a big picture, that's true. But the culture and uh, I guess the atmosphere, the environment is so different.
Well, for one, I'm
and
glad
maybe
you
that,
went to. I'm glad you went to jump school because when I was up on that roof and you were trying to talk me down, you told me how to land.
yeah, yeah, yep,
But yeah, that pipeline you went through. I mean, I've told you before. I looked at doing that and thought, wow, that would be cool. But man, there was no way I was gonna make it.
yeah.
Physically, I would barely have passed the men's to start the program, and mentally, I couldn't have done it. I would have washed way
Yeah,
earlier.
I think it was just the idea that you do something like that, and unless you, I guess, decommission yourself and get really hurt bad, you can be medically boarded. And some people did. Some people got, they were strange things. If you broke an ankle or leg or whatever, you stay in the service and heal. And but some guys, they had some other issues internally, and it's just part of their genetics or whatnot. It's not something they did and hurt themselves. But I knew if I did, if I picked, okay, what's the hardest thing they have, and I only knew about it from where I live, where I grew up at in Florida, and I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. And then if it doesn't work out, I'll have hopefully some other options, and if not, they'll send me where they need me, and I'll just have to suck it up. So in my mind, that's it was like a no-brainer. This is what I'm going to do, and hopefully it works out. But my reality check didn't come until after that year of doing it and some of the major, I guess, checkpoints. And with every job, there's politics and drama and personality conflicts. And I don't know if you were anything like me when I first came in that first year or 2 years, really just kind of kept my mouth shut, just kind of observe and see what people are doing. And just try to stay out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
for a little while.
I was definitely keeping quiet and more Boy Scoutish, till I went on my TDY of infamy, which I might discuss later.
That'd be a good
that
one.
Yeah, if I have enough time for that. Then that got me jaded as all get out.
Yeah, that was a good one there.
But anything you want to touch on the pipeline there before we go on to when you change career fields?
Not into anything specific. I have a profound, or I guess I should say, a deep and sincere respect for it. And I only saw the surface, the training side of it. I never dealt with hearing, guys that made it deployed and seen all the action over there. And I mean, things that we can't even imagine seeing. We've heard stories from different people we know, I'm sure, and it's completely different, I think, when you live that and you come home with that kind of baggage. So I have a sincere care for those guys and anybody in those roles, any kind of combat role, or even pilots that fly all the time. It's like it's a risk. Those jobs are high risk, and not everybody comes back, or they come back with a piece of them missing, and even people that may not be in those combat roles, they get deployed too, and accidents happen or indirect fire happens. And at the end of the day, regardless of what job or position you had, it's like there's a potential that, you could come back with a Purple Heart, or sadly, some people came back and, um, they may have given their life, whether they intended to or didn't do anything heroic. It just happened. They were casualties. So it's sad, when it comes to that. But
Oh, definitely.
the people that run to danger, they live for that, and it takes a special, like you said, the mental fortitude. And I used to think that would be the hardest part. Like they're gonna get in my head, and the training's gonna get into my head. And over time, that confidence and that mental strength, it gets, it does grow with you as you get stronger and faster and whatnot, and different things you're doing. The challenge comes into play when your physical abilities are spent and you have to keep going. There's no recovering. There's no timeout, nothing. Like you're on a clock and you have to get this done. And that's where people, I won't say they break, but to the point where I had gotten, I'd say just past a year mark, and it's about a two and a half year school. And if you can get past that year and a half, unless you hurt yourself or get a DUI, you're going to get through it. I think for the most part, people are going to get through it. So yeah, I don't have any real complaints about it. I probably wouldn't have picked a different job or changed the path, and even knowing if it was going to play out the same way, I would have done it all over again. Those were some of the best memories that I'll never forget. Just it was like going 90 miles an hour all the time. Basically, I was a paid athlete, for the Air Force, so to speak. And it came with a sense of pride more so than being just average, or I brought up those jobs like cooks and stuff, and you need those people. They have a purpose, but it's when you have that special designator or you're in a high attrition field, it comes with a sense of pride, especially when you earn it. And that was the big thing for me, was being able to earn something and not just show up and have it given to me. So, and I know you can relate to that in the career field that we cross paths into.
Yeah, we had a little pride in ours for sure, and I'm still happy that they, had it set up that way. But yeah, you said it. I mean, it's just different about more of the combat arms. There's a lot more pride involved there. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything either. I'd put it there because I wouldn't be where I'm at today. But
yeah,
it was definitely, even in the career field we went in. It's shared career field. Other branches have, but met some of the guys that did it in the Marine Corps. Way more pride,
Oh yeah.
But that whole branch has got pride locked down. I remember some Air Force bigwig came to our base or something, and I just remember him saying, if he goes to any Marine Corps camp and he says, what's your job, and they say, I'm a Marine. He said, when I go around to any Air Force base, I say, what's your job? And they say, I'm a load master. I'm an F-16 crew chief, And he was like, no, you're airman first. And it's just a different branch, man.
Yep. It goes back to the that comment I was making about the different schools I went to and the different branches. They really are a different environment. It's not just a change of uniform. It's a whole, I guess, attitude almost. The discipline or the rules, or I guess the formalities, are somewhat similar. But where one branch is more lax or not as rigid as the other, that's the differences you tend to see, I guess, from the surface, just meeting other people in different branches and hearing their stories.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of this comic I have. What's it called? Private Murphy's Law. It's some old Army comic, but it's got a panel. It shows a Army guy wading in the water. It's raining. He goes, "This sucks." And some Marine Corps dude with a knife in his mouth, and he goes, "I like the way this sucks." And some Special Forces dude that's like all strapped out, and he says, "I wish it would suck more." And it shows Army aviator guy in a helicopter looking down. He goes, "Sure sucks down there." And last panel, some Air Force guy in an office, window outside, it's raining. He goes, "Oh, this sucks. Cable's out."
That's good.
Yeah, crack me up.
Yeah, perspective is a better word than environment, I guess. Yeah, that's good.
Yes, then we ended up. I mean, fortunate for you, you got into the career field you got into after that. I mean, definitely, because there were guys that did get sent to be cooks and stuff after that, which, like you said, honorable too. But definitely, everybody knows what you're in. It's every job craps on every other job. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And we linked up at Nameless Air Force Base, and we had some good times there, I think.
Yeah, that's. I didn't even know what I was getting into at that point. That was a whole new side of Air Force for me, you know. And I just went on autopilot basically. You get told what to do, where to go, show up at this time, and you don't know anybody, and it's like, man, I'm going to be here for a while, you know. And I remember they were telling me, hey, you're going to. I got to actually choose what was going to happen to me between two different jobs. One was similar to what I was in, and then the job we got into. And I remember asking a captain, I said, what would you do in my shoes? You've been doing the combat stuff for your whole life. And he said, you know, I've got 2 degrees and I'll always be stuck doing work like this or some kind of management for this type of work. And it doesn't really translate outside of, you know, combat stuff. And he said, if you want to basically set yourself up for the future, of course, I kind of laugh at that now, just with where the world's at right now in this moment. But he wasn't wrong, you know, and I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to trust this guy. And I don't regret that either. I met some really good people, and I'd say out of the skill set aside and the opportunity to be in it and have succeeded, the biggest takeaway for me was the friends that I made. And it's not just, we always talk about how, you know, you can be at basic training together or tech school or leadership class or whatever, and you don't see those faces anymore, but you talk to them or run into them a year later, and you can pick up a conversation like you never left. You know, it's kind of, I think all the branches kind of share that in the armed forces.
Oh, for
but
sure.
More so, I was going to say more so in a specialty job, because you kind of follow that career progression in the civilian world if it translates well into it, and you end up running into people again, and they're not in uniform no more. They're civilians or, you know, civil service or whatever.
So you mentioned that different Air Force than, you know, your initial path once you got permanent party at the base we were at there. What kind of was different or shocked you about it? I mean, we've talked about this stuff before, but what were your thoughts on it?
It was more of a, I'm trying to think of 1 or 2 words. Kind of what comes to my mind is you're with the masses, basically. You're not in a smaller group of people where everybody knows each other's faces. This is, I'll use the term base, you know, it's base wide. And rather than being isolated in one school or 2 buildings, the place you sleep and the place you train at, you know, getting to our first duty station, you went everywhere. I remember all the additional duties we had to do, and that was kind of surprising to me. I'm like, what? We're not training or practicing or doing our job. We're going to help do construction escort duty and security stuff. And So it was kind of an adjustment. It's like, okay, you're part of the main, I guess, the big cogwheel now,
Yeah.
and you got to help out. It's all hands on deck everywhere. It's not just you worried about yourself the whole time, which, it has its advantages. It's good and bad. I'm sure we'll talk about volunteering and stuff like that later on. And you got to weigh that stuff out with, I know we've talked about this a lot. Being good at your job and then being good at showing up or volunteering.
Oh yeah, that was a sore subject for me. After that ALS, when I went to that Airman Leadership School, which for people listening, that's usually if you're in 4 or 5 years, they're forcing you to go. Kind of depend on that. Everyone went when they made E5, but I mean, yeah, I was told that what was the word instructor said? Volunteerism supersedes your job performance, basically.
I remember that. Yep.
And I mean, not to turn this whole episode into modern day military bashing. I mean, it's just the military goes through cycles. It always has. I mean, we were, I guess you look at a global war on terrorism era. After the main combat actions in Afghanistan and Iraq, kind of after that, the sequester that happened while we were in, kind of some drawdown stuff,
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just different time to be in. Not a really moralizing time to be in, I would say.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
But I mean, still glad to do it. But it was different, all the instructor stories. Everybody's getting issued new boots, new uniforms, new this, all and that. And I didn't get a cold weather jacket till I was like 2 years in. Till I got in trouble for wearing a normal jacket. So you can't wear that. I was like, hey, issue me one.
Yeah.
But yeah, different. Just it seems like perceived standards that were slipping.
Yeah.
You had some on that, but what do you got with that topic?
Yeah, that was it was different for sure. I remember some of the mandatory stuff we had to do, and I know other people in other branches can resonate with this, but I remember every year you got to go get a flu shot. You got to go get this flu shot. And one year they went to the nasal sprays, and it was almost like we probably had a choice, because the way, if I remember right, and I probably don't, but at least for us, it was like, hey, y'all got to go down to this shop and get your flu stuff signed off. Like, it was optional. You could go and be like, no thanks, and then sign that you showed up and left. I'm sure we probably had to get it, but I compare that to what's happened recently with COVID shots and all that, and how many people pushed back on that. And it's like, man, it wasn't too long ago, they were making you get a flu shot,
Yeah, I mean, the military was different. Man, I'm glad I wasn't in the military during the COVID shenanigans.
Yeah, me too.
I really don't know what would have happened. I'm definitely gonna be doing an episode on that stuff, just kind of after effect, what people think about it now. But yeah, the funny one on the flu shot. I remember the last one I had to go get. I think it was right before I got out. I had to bring a couple of the new guys with me at our shop, we'll call it, and I just remember I said, follow my lead. And whenever they sprayed that crap in my nose, like, I immediately blew it back out. I raised the lady saying, like, hold it in there.
Yep.
I was like,
I did the same thing.
Getting mean mugged. That stuff always made me sick. But, yeah, who knows? But yeah, we saw a couple ones in our shop. Someone with cornrows. That's not hair regulations, but give them a pass. And different stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, you started to see a weird, I won't say contention, but it was like, we say putting people on blast or calling them on the carpet for the older generation. And it was like certain things, forgetting to salute, or, hey, your hat's not on, or whatever. Hey, don't forget this and that. And that's usually how we handle business. But it got to a point there for a little while where it was like, and I don't know what started it, where it came from. It's almost like all of a sudden, people were trying different things. And I don't remember if that was the same time period that it was kind of making some of the, you remember those, it was like Air Force Times newspapers, or the base Gazette paper. And
Yeah.
they'd have some article in there about some specific religion's going to get petitioned, or they're petitioning for facial hair exclusions or something, you know. And at that time, the only thing we had ever heard of was if you had a medical condition, you got a waiver, shaving waiver.
Yeah.
And I didn't see too much of that. There's certain people, certain ethnicities that, you know, it was more common in, just, you know, just based on genetics and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, at least what I saw at that spot was, it wasn't abused in any way or taken advantage of. And it wasn't, it's not like people just let themselves go if they had a waiver for something. I remember some people had waivers where they couldn't wear combat boots. They had to wear tennis shoes because they had arthritis or something in their feet, you know. I think we had somebody in our flight at one time that had lupus, you know. Just different things people had. And but it's interesting you brought up the hair thing, because I remember that it was my last year in, coming up on 2014. But it seemed like that entire year of 2013, it was like this tit for tat with, it was like lunch breaks and chow runs, and so-and-so's been gone too long and they should have been back by now. What are they doing? And then it became a finger pointing game about haircuts, and so-and-so's not in regs and this person's doing that. And rather than just, I would say, leadership or the higher ranking people, you know, they always preach that we keep each other in check and any person of any rank can check the other person. But I don't think anybody of lower rank was going to do that.
No.
Just
I do remember getting in trouble for my haircut. I was inspired by the other people I saw with their, let's say, relaxed standards. Whenever I started slicking my hair back a little bit.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Gosh, what was some all call we went to? I don't even remember. Some big general, some big hanger, and I was taller than the guys around me, and he pointed at me and he goes, "Some of you guys might slick your hair back in the morning," and blah blah. And
yeah, I remember that.
Our chief, I believe it was, boy, he called me right to his office after that. I didn't
Yep.
have a fight. I just said, "Yeah, I'll cut it."
I remember that.
You know,
that was, you know, it's funny now. Like I really do laugh at it. Some of this stories. I'm glad you remembered that. Because I remember at the time just being pissed off. Like, man, they're like targeting you, and then I knew I was getting out, and I think most people knew, like, they're not going to get me a deployment or anything like that. And you know, the job we're in, obviously, it translated very well on the outside. So it's like, you know, take your time and run, you know. And but yeah, I remember that incident and just being irritated with it, like, because even I remember they had I think they did it to me 2 or 3 times, and it was our supervisor at the time, real nice guy, real strong family man, children, solid beliefs, you know, morale, and they were just picking on him hard for just trying to just do what it said in the book, black and white. These are the code of ethics. This is the dress and appearance standards and grooming and all that. And I remember it was almost like he got crucified.
Oh, he almost did. You know, I saw him.
It was bad.
I saw him
it was
last
bad.
year. I saw him last year, and he mentioned that. He said that was the worst time of his whole career.
Wow.
Yeah, he's still.
I believe it.
Not happy about it, but I mean.
Yeah, I believe it.
He wasn't in the wrong ever, so he never got in trouble, but it still stressed the heck out of him.
Oh yeah, it's like you're having to. I mean, how do you defend yourself besides saying the same thing over and over again? That it's you doing your job by the book, and I can't imagine being read a different narrative from the other side of the table, going, you know, why did you say it to this person? You know, so in a way, it was like us getting called out, and then our response was kind of like, hey, y'all have no problem addressing us. Is it because, you know, and not to be sexist or anything, is it because we're men? You know, like, we can take it. We're not going to go cry in the corner and go tell whoever, I don't know, the mental health doctor that our feelings are hurt. You know what I mean? Like, now you're on a suicide watch. It's just, I don't know. I guess I just didn't think that way. And I don't know if leadership was just like not wanting to poke the bear, or they didn't have a spine, or they didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings, and then they get in trouble. And then when they saw what happened to our supervisor at the time, it was like, oh man, nobody's gonna fall on that sword and try to read the regs, or point the finger, and it just didn't have to be that way.
No, in our career field, I mean, this translates to everybody that's civilian side, as we are today. But everybody civilian side relates to. There's so many people in management or leadership positions, and they just rather wish it away, ignore a problem, and sometimes stuff needs to be stomped out immediately. That's what I learned from probably best lesson I learned from our time there. But,
that's really good. That's a good way of saying it. It's a fire that needs to be put out right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they just want it to, it'll get cold next month and it'll go away, but it didn't. Yeah, you saw it really trickled down to, and everybody sees this in all their jobs and branches, and I think it's just more so obvious when you go through a training program like that in the military, where everything's about rules on its most basic fundamental level, and then all of a sudden in the operational world, we're going to bend that one a little bit, and we're going to slack off here, and and then it just kind of felt like a 9-to-5 job every day.
Well, that's because we're in the Air Force, man.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of jobs like that. Not everybody's running around with a rifle or a rucksack or flying an airplane, or a tank, driving a tank, or a lot of admin stuff.
To spin it back to what you said, like no regrets. I don't either. I wish I would have got to deploy in our career field. I mean, not that it was combat arms or something, but just to actually go to where we're supposed to be, where the action was at, and take part in it in some way. But I mean, it's just, that's kind of a funny thing too. I learned from our time in is, man, you'd think you sign for the military, you're going to go somewhere. No, you're not. I mean, I even talked to, it was one of my wife's family friends and stuff, and they were in the Marine Corps. No, they were in the Army, like in 1968, and I was like, oh, well, they went to Vietnam. Nope, Germany the whole time. It's just random.
You'd never guess.
Yeah. So spin it back on the positive stuff here, some of the funny ones. You told me before we started recording here, I should tell how our wing commander was a alien from space. That was a good one. Yeah, I remember. I mean, I probably told you when I went back to work after it, but it was Airman Leadership School, and there I was sitting there in the auditorium or something one day, because the wing commander's going to come talk to us, and we're all sitting down. Guy next to me, after the wing commander does his little spiel, and he says, anybody got any questions for me, And of course, the first couple people were like, hey, what's it like to be a general, And I'm just like, oh my gosh, just brown nose and slugs. And the guy next to me, he stands up and he's like, General Busboy, this is Airman Snuffy from the blah, 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 blah. I heard the Air Force is going to take part in our next mission to space with the X-37 or whatever it was, And he said, can you explain that? And I was like, oh my gosh, because now this, one star is like staring at this guy right next to me, and I'm sitting there, having to pretend to be serious and such. Yeah,
you're sitting there with your hair slicked back out of regs.
I'm pleased as crap. Yeah, and what's he say? He's like, I'm glad you asked that question, Airman. But let's think beyond that. Space truly is the last frontier, isn't it? Forget about missions in orbit. He was like, think about what galaxies might lay beyond our galaxies. The universe is infinite. What other dimensions? What other things might we find out there? And he went on and on about this, and I was like, holy smokes, what a wacko. So, I mean, I remember going back to work, and I told you guys that our new Wang Kang was a space alien, and of course you guys took me seriously because I was never joking around.
Yeah, you were serious.
Yeah, but it all culminated in that promotion ceremony we went to. And, okay, to phrase this one right, so this General Busboy had spent some time with the B2 in his past. And what's he go on a rant about air power and what do you call us, steely-eyed warriors? That was it.
I remember that.
He went on, and of course we're all standing together, all of us from our shop. And he's going on and on. He starts yelling and yelling and yelling. He goes, and the B-2 is the only stealth bomber in the galaxy, and I know that for a fact.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
That was the pinnacle of it. And
that was. It didn't get any more weird than him, that's for sure.
Yes, the other Kyle I worked with, yes, I remember we worked with, he looked at me, he goes, that guy is a Martian.
That's funny.
Yeah, definitely the Air Force had some characters, definitely maybe more on the nerdy side even, but no, I mean that guy was probably legit. We had some pretty good officers and such. Pretty good group we worked with actually. I wouldn't trade it for nothing.
Yeah, I do appreciate when I got out they had a debrief, and I think you probably had to do it too. And we probably had different commanders because you had another year to go, I think.
Yeah, just.
But I remember they gave you this checklist. You had to run all over the place. It was a rat race. But I appreciated, the last couple things I had to do. I got to sit down with the group commander, and if I'm not mistaken, they're either a major or a colonel, and they would ask you, like, what were your, I guess, favorite things here? What did you enjoy about here in your job and this and that? And then they asked the question. They said, hey, it's amnesty time now. What concerns did you have? Or what were some challenges or difficulties? Or is there, and he even opened it up. This one particular guy opened it up and said, were there any concerns that I should know about? And in the back of my mind, it's like I wanted him to ask that, but I don't know if I was ready to tell him, even though I had nothing to lose. It was just like, man, do I really want to, drop a bunch of complaints or crap on this guy's table? And what if he doesn't care and he's leaving too or getting out? But he was really sincere about it, and that's when I kind of brought up what I had mentioned earlier about standards in your job and whatnot. This will be a story for a whole nother episode, but it got to a point there where you had people in training for this particular field, and they couldn't get certified. They couldn't safely do the job, and they lingered there for like 2 years. And getting some of the benefits. There was something about somebody re-enlisting, and back then they had a bonus. Back then they don't have that anymore. And I just flat out shot him straight. I said, it puts a bad taste in everyone's mouth in this particular job because, and it would affect all the other career fields and the other branches, where somebody can come in and get the benefits of something they didn't earn. It goes back to earning. And I said, a lot of people are going to get out if this keeps up, and then the whole enforcing the regulations and whatnot. I basically said one side's getting picked at, and he seemed to appreciate it, Now whether or not he did anything with it, I do remember him vaguely saying it is a sensitive issue they were addressing with some of the EO stuff, and. Yeah. I appreciated that he gave that time to somebody like me that was pretty much done, out the door. There was nothing he could say or do at that point to really get me to stay in or persuade me to do another enlistment. And even if he tried, I would have appreciated it, but.
Yeah. No, I know the situation you're talking on, and I think I remember the same guy. We talked about him a little bit before. We could not peg down a name. Not that we'd name him here anyway, but
yeah. You're kind of coming up with a nickname.
Yeah. No, it's all a lot of the time me and you were in together, and a lot of the guys we were with. I mean, I this is maybe typical military experience, let's say. I mean, again, that the career field we had wasn't combat arms, but think all of us hated it at some point, or started hating it a lot, especially towards the end. And a ton of us got out that we worked with. I mean, that. And everybody's doing pretty all right, nowadays it seems. But I would still wouldn't trade for nothing. I'd do it again. Try to put it back on a positive note for the Veterans Day special. It was a great experience. And hey, when you're in your early mid-20s, everything sucks. Well, not everything. But when you're being told the greatest.
I'll say it was the greatest security. I don't like to say security blanket, but it was. I didn't feel like I had to worry about anything, even when there was that government shutdown, and that was in 2010, I think.
I was 12 or 13. I can't remember.
Was it? I think it happened twice when I was in. I can't remember. And that was a little weird, but it was like, oh, I'll be okay. They're gonna pay us, because back then, I mean, you were really good with money. I wasn't, and so I remember that happening. I'm like, wow, they would do this to the military, and just being completely clueless,
Yeah.
And little did I know in my civilian life later, they were going to do it 3 or 4 more times as a federal employee.
Oh, now it's every time,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Is what it is. So I've talked to a couple of the other fellows we interviewed here. Besides me, of course, you still keep up in contact with a lot of the guys in?
Yeah. Yeah. There's always that handful. And really, even people I don't keep up with. Like I said, you know how it is. You can cross paths or just cold call them, and you pick up like it was nothing.
Yeah,
share a few laughs, and
that's a special part of it. You make some friends for life for sure, and
you really do. Yeah, you really do.
Like you said, one of my good buddies I hadn't talked to for like 6 years, and you just pick up like it hasn't been 6 years at all.
Yeah. Yep, I've had people going through stuff in life, and I've had people reach out to me, they see something I shared or whatever on social media, and they'd reach out, and would you know it, they were going through the same thing of something in life, and just sharing and being there, just listening. And even, I don't think I told you this, my I don't know if you remember him. He worked in public affairs, and he was we shared the bathroom in the dorms.
I don't know if you remember him. Who it is.
And that guy, this is crazy. He has his doctorate, his master's, and 2 other BAs, I think.
Jeez.
Dude, long story short, it's really weird. I never kept up with him, but, we were kind of linked together with all the other stuff, and he reached out to me after some stuff I went through in life that you know about, and, going through a crappy divorce and everything. And I'm past that 3 years later. This was beginning of this year. He reaches out to me, and everything he's going through is very similar to my situation, like actual intricate personal details. And I'm literally almost hearing myself from somebody that's, somebody else. And I thought, this is, of all the people he could have called, he calls me, the guy he shares a toilet with. Back in, at this crappy base, living in some crappy dorms and not even knowing what the meaning of life is, and still don't. This guy's reaching out just like that. That's all it took. And he said that he had called me, and of all the other people he called, and I would have never guessed this, he called his basic training instructor. And me and his basic training instructor were his, I guess, his helping hands. I don't, his shoulder to lean on, and it was very emotional, because he and I hadn't talked about anything in life, and I'm just catching up on kind of the bomb that went off in his life. But I would have never been able to really speak to him or kind of know the pain he's going through and proactively reach out to him. There was days where I was like, I need to check on this guy, because the last thing I want to hear is, not that I would get a phone call, but I don't want to see it, on his Facebook page or whatever. And, his funeral's tomorrow, like that really is something I do think about with all the people we've met, like,
oh, you got to answer the phone, man.
You got to. Yeah. That's a big thing. And, you just never know what people are going through. And I thought it was just crazy after how many years? Let's see, I got out. I'd never crossed paths with him again since I moved out.
He's doing all right now, though.
Yeah, he's stable and kicking. And
three things that stuck out to me. I mean, one, great job answering the phone, being a good pal, and two, he knew his TI and could contact them. That blows my mind.
Yeah,
I couldn't do that.
I couldn't either.
And three, you probably made every listener that wasn't Air Force mad because you were complaining about sharing a bathroom.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes, we had it so hard in the Air Force with steak every night and shrimp cocktails on Friday before the ball.
Yeah, crab legs.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking time to do this, Brian. Good to catch up with you. Happy Veterans Day. I hope it's a good one for you, man.
Yeah, I hope it is for you too.
All right, take it easy.
All right, bye.
Before I close this out, I had a couple things to say. Many times when veterans are talking about their service, there's a funny story or two that crops up. My original plan for this episode is to focus on some of the lighthearted stories for Veterans Day. After talking to some of the other vets, I decided just to open it up to anything, humorous or not. That said, military service is, of course, a serious matter, and I personally know a few vets that experienced things that overshadowed any good memories they have about their time in. I hope today that all veterans can look back at their service, focus on something positive they got out of it, and take pride in it. You heard from a Vietnam vet, a Gulf War era vet, and myself and Brian, who are from the Global War on Terror, or GWOT timeframe. Despite these different time frames, there is still a brotherhood of sorts that connects us all. On a historical note, 105 years ago, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the armistice was signed between the Allies of World War I and Germany. This, the end of World War I, was remembered each November 11th as Armistice Day, to remember the fallen military men and mark the end of that devastating war. World War I was called the War to End War, and that became nothing more than an idealistic slogan, as there will always be war, and therefore there will always be veterans. In 1954, Armistice Day, through Congress and signed into law by President Eisenhower, became Veterans Day. The last American World War I veteran passed away in 2011. Surviving World War II and Korean War veterans numbers are getting smaller every day. Vietnam veterans aren't as young as I remember them being when I was a boy, and Gulf War veterans are all pretty much in their 50s. I hope you reach out to your veteran friends and family members, as none of us are getting any younger. Thank you all for listening, and happy Veterans Day.